All right, hello, welcome into my channel where we discuss doing in-home elderly care for a loved one, family member. Could be a family member, could just be someone who is a loved one that is not exactly a family member, but somebody that has found themselves in a situation where they need medical assistance to be done inside of the house. And if you watched any of these videos, you know that I use my grandmother and the time that I spent with her, Ruth Callis Kenton, as the case study for these videos. And you've heard me talk about how her and my grandfather, John Harrison Kenton Jr., spent 30 years, maybe over 30 years, in the elderly care, retirement care business where they had and owned and operated two nursing home facilities in the central North Carolina area, one in Wake County and one in the neighboring county of Harnett County. And so you've heard me speak about how this is something that I've always been around, and a lot of time spent there at those facilities when I was young and growing up, as did all of my cousins and as did all of my aunts and uncles and my parents, and very familiar with what that looks like, always have been. And then Ruth, over the last years of her life, found herself in a situation where she needed somebody to give her assistance. And again, you've heard me speak about this, but she was defiant. She did not want to go to a nursing home. She said, quote, John Mario, I spent my whole life in a nursing home. I do not want to go back. So we made adjustments and we implemented some systems and processes and put things together so that she was able to stay at home to term, okay, until she passed. We're very proud about that. I think most elderly people, if they had their way about it, they would prefer to do that. It's not always an option. It's not always an option for several reasons. I was available to assist, so was my younger sister, which you'll hear me speak a little bit more about her today regarding today's topic. So we were available and we were able to do it. Not everyone's going to be in that kind of position. And also, Ruth's conditions allowed for me as a novice. You know, I don't have a background in elderly care, meaning formally trained or formally studied, to be able to come in and take care of her in that way. You've heard me mention certain conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia, which are a completely different ball of wax, meaning the level of effort and care that is needed to properly give the customer what they need in order to have the best care. So, yeah, that's what we do here on this channel, and I come to you with these live streams. We'll go ahead and get into today's episode, and I'll throw up the slide here. There we go. Today I'm going to talk about customer death, okay? Because again, if you find yourself in one of these situations where you're doing in-home care for a aged loved one, or again, it could be an acquaintance, family member, somebody through the church or some other community work, wherever, there's a good chance that the reason why they need this level of care is because they are approaching death or approaching an end season in their life. Obviously, that's not what we want. That's not preferable, but it seems like that's the way a lot of these situations, shape up. So I want to go over a few points. I've got my second slide here that I'm about to throw up, and I'm going to tell you about what happened when Ruth died, specifically the night that she died, and maybe a couple of things about what happened immediately following. So Ruth, who she had been losing her body, it was the craziest thing because, or maybe not so crazy, her mind was totally there. It was over the years, it was her body that continued to break down on her and continued to put her in a position where she was just losing more and more of her abilities, primarily her vision. Okay, by the end, she was completely blind, and that was very difficult. The whole process was very difficult for her. She lost the majority of her hearing as well. She had congestive heart failure. She had high blood pressure. She was a diabetic. I mean, it was just one thing after another. And, things just continued to decline on her, unfortunately, especially in those last years. So, leading up to her death, she wasn't feeling well. She went to the hospital. They kept her a couple of days. She she had pneumonia. They tested her for COVID. I don't remember how that came back. Maybe it was positive or not. But yeah, she had pneumonia. She was struggling to breathe. She didn't feel good, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, it got to the point where they said, there's nothing else that we can do for her here. We're going to send her home. We're going to send hospice over so that they're able to put a bed in for her and make things as comfortable as possible. They also gave us a hospice kit, which I'm not terribly familiar with, but one of the items that was in the kit was morphine drops. So she had that there, and we were able to use that to ease some of her suffering. So the night of of her passing, my younger sister was there with her, and so was one of her caretakers. And I came into the house late. I was actually in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I drove in. My sister messages me, and she says, "Hey, I just want to let you know we started giving her morphine." And one of Ruth's other helpers, who is a formally trained nurse and was very instrumental throughout the whole process, told me when this whole thing was starting, she said, well, usually in hospice care, when they start administering morphine, you're hours away, right? So that's something to keep in mind if you find yourself in a similar process. So I immediately jumped in the car and drove to Ruth's house. I got there around midnight or so, and Ruth was in the hospice bed sleeping. My sister and the dog were in the bed next to them, also sleeping. The other caretaker was in another room sleeping, so I sat there with Ruth, and I brought her flowers. This is the other thing. She died on her birthday. September 17th, she died on her birthday. So I knew I was going to see her. I knew it was close, but earlier in the day, I'd planned on going anyways because it was her birthday. So brought her some flowers and sat them there and sat them on the table, and then I sat down and spent some time with her. And I guess about an hour later or so, I go and lay down, and the next thing I know, her caretaker's coming in the room and saying, "Hey, I think that she's passed or she's passing." So I jump out of bed and I go in the room, and my younger sister is holding her hand, and you can tell that she's on her last breaths, and she ended up passing away about 5 a.m. September 17th, 2023, and I rubbed her feet a little bit, and we knew it was coming and everything, and so what a blessing. We were all prepared for it. I mean, it was at the point when someone's in a condition like that and they continue to debilitate, you think it can come anytime, and heck, you get to a point where you think every time you see them is going to be the last time that you see them, right? So it was sad for us, but luckily we were able to prepare for that, and we were able to the last thing I told her was that I loved her, and that was a couple of days earlier. So when I got back to the house that night, I wasn't able to communicate with her. But a couple of days earlier, I gave her a hug, and the last thing I told her was, I love you, and the last thing she told me was that she loved me. Storybook. Perfect. Wouldn't change a thing. So yeah, she ended up dying that day, and we subsequently went through the regular funeral process and everything like that. So how do you want to react when this situation comes up in your life, or when you're experiencing this? And then even more than that, if you're planning on doing this multiple times in your life, so I'll throw up the slide here. These are kind of my quick, fast takeaways. that I want to share with you. And again, just like everything else that I do or I talk about, this is only a snapshot of the complete list. And then, even at that, everyone's situation is going to need to be tailored to whatever it is they happen to be going through. But I tried to pick a couple of items here that would probably be universal across the board. The first one, having a plan. So here's zooming out from the night that I just described of her dying. I'd been living with her for a couple of years, and I had actually moved out. We had a couple of months before she died, so that was one thing that was very important to my plan. The way that everything was set up, I didn't like the idea, or it was not going to work for me to actually be there up until the point that she died. Um, it's not my house. There's a lot of other, we talk about the concept of stakeholders and other people that are going to be involved in this process and are involved in the customer's life, and what your positioning is within that order. And the best thing for me to do was to have transitioned out. And I mean, it really dovetailed together perfectly. Um, I ended up moving out a couple of months before, which mitigated a lot of the things that I was trying to avoid by her gone and me still having that as my primary residence. Um, that was a big part of my plan. And then being able to set up my life the way that it needed to be and already start to look past the process. That's another thing. While you're doing this, you have to continue your own life, and you have to continue seeing further down the road and down than just the moment that you're particularly in right now. You'll lose your sanity. I mean, flat out, you'll lose your sanity. You will be totally overwhelmed. And I've talked in other videos that you can go and watch about how heavy the lift becomes at certain times, and how taxing physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually that it can be on you to be doing this thing, and struggling with ideas like you're the only one doing it, or not getting the assistance that you're looking for. I mean, it could be a multitude of things. So I had to do that, and that was a big part of my plan. I had to execute it. You've got to have a plan, okay? And even before I had moved out, I had a plan for what I was going to do if she died while I was there. The second piece, being emotionally fit, okay? You have to be emotionally fit. So again, it was a blessing for us because the end came and we saw it coming, okay? You might not be as fortunate to have that type of situation for yourself, but you do need to examine the emotional fitness piece of it and make sure that you are prepared for that. You do not want to be the one, hey, this is the way deaths are, right? Someone dies. There's usually a lot of traffic going on at the house. There's phone calls, and there's this and that, and there's people that are responding to it differently, okay? You want to be the centerpiece, all right? You do not want to be emotional roller coaster person, all right? And frankly, to expand on that, you want to be spiritually fit, okay? You want to know what you believe about things, because this is as death is the one true constant of all humanity throughout the entire existence of humanity. I mean, that's a pretty undeniable phrase. It's the only true change that happens in the world, right? It is a very grounding, and you cannot negotiate death, or there's you have to know what you believe about it. I mean, I'll just, instead of trying to make a greater point, I'll just come back to that and double tap that. You have to know what you believe about it. Okay, so you want to be emotionally fit and spiritually fit. One of the key indicators to get there is to be sober. Okay, be sober. You, again, emotional fitness, spiritual fitness, mental fitness. You do not want to be somebody that is coping while you're in the middle of the experience and using substances to do that. I mean, and I'm saying substances, it could be a multitude of poor behavior choices that you could, be going through in that moment. All right. You want to avoid all of that. And again, a big part of that comes back to knowing what your plan is and how you're going to handle the moment. Okay. And thinking through it and then executing on it. Be fast, fluid, and flexible. Okay. Fast, fluid, and flexible. Why? Because things are going to come up or potentially will come up that you were not expecting. People are going to react in ways that you were not expecting, potentially. Things might be asked of you that you were not expecting to have to do. Okay. And I'm not saying that you have to agree with all of those, but if something comes up and it is something that you want to take on and assist with, be fast, fluid, and flexible about it. Because again, you want to be the rock. While others are falling apart around you, you want to be the one with the cool head. People will remember that. It's frank. Okay, first of all, it's just the best way to handle the scenario, flat out. And then second of all, people will remember that. That is the public facing posturing that you want to put forward for respect of the customer and for respect of yourself and for the rest of the family. Okay, you absolutely want to keep things on that even keel. All right, so again, there could be 20 other items to look at here. These are just some broad general ones that we'll probably drill into these later on in this video series. I'm gonna keep this thing going and just continue to dig down and tell stories and look at these items. So when people find themselves in a situation, this video series can be a resource for them to help navigate through some of those issues. All right, my last slide. Like I always say, you can email me or put something in the comments. Either way, mario@thealphaitalian.com. Give me your name and location. When I get some questions together, I'm going to start answering them here on the show, and we'll be able to work in that piece. And I generally want to, or genuinely want to, assist people with whatever issues they might be having with this subject matter, or hear their experience of how it's gone for them and compare notes. So let me know who you are and where you're writing from. All right. So everyone, enjoy your day, and I will see you again.